Yeah, that's completely understandable. I definitely agree. Communication is a key thing. I know in Washington, just because the Pfizer shot has just now become available to kids 12 and up, that there's no real news if there's going to be like a vaccination requirement to go back full time in the fall. Do you know if that would happen in New York? Because I know, like, obviously there are some vaccines that if you want to go to middle school, if you want to go to high school, you have to have them. Do you think that would be something that they would add to just make sure it wasn't a risk of disruption if there was an outbreak?
So my guess is they won't do it for the fall, in part because the vaccines are still under emergency approval, or so many of them are, and it's hard to mandate vaccination under the emergency approval. I do think long term, you're absolutely right. We mandate vaccines for all kinds of things to go, unless you have very specific reasons to opt out, to go to schools, to go to summer camps, to go to all sorts of programs, you need your vaccinations. And I think when we get there, COVID vaccination will be and should be one of those.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one thing I've seen here is so many of my classmates have been so reluctant to get the vaccine because first there was the issue with AstraZeneca, and then there was the issue with Johnson & Johnson. And I think one big issue in both those cases is the lack of communication around what the problem is. I think that that's something, unfortunately, that
Right.
my district and Seattle in general hasn't addressed, is saying, hey, these two vaccines, we had issues with them because they were using adenovirus as a carrier. Pfizer and Moderna aren't doing that. And that's one thing that I've noticed is there's this lack of communication that allows for people to see, oh, Facebook said these two vaccines were bad. I need to be careful and not get any vaccine. How do you think that, is there a way that the city can address, is there like a public relations communication aspect that could be used to kind of assuage the concern that I think a lot of families have about vaccinating their kids, vaccinating themselves?
I mean, yes, the cities just need to, I mean, not just New York, the cities everywhere, governments everywhere need to be clear and confident about the public health communications they're putting out. Ideally find more and more validators. And sometimes those validators will be celebrities, but also honestly, they'll be doctors and nurse practitioners and community health workers, just folks people trust, saying, there's no doubt about it, you need to take this vaccine. One of the things we found in our surveying of New York City schools is a lot of families were willing to trust their principal as a validator for why they should come back. Now, I'm not saying the principal is necessarily a health expert, but if the principal can get the right health information and then say, here's what I'm hearing from our Department of Health, here's what city and state officials are saying about the vaccines, why you should have it, and it'd be really, really clear and give parents guidance of what they need, I think a lot of folks will find that compelling. And that might be parents finding it compelling, different than the students, but also if folks have a family doctor, I realize not everyone has, if folks go to a clinic regularly, have a nurse or nurse practitioner in their lives, those are some of the people that they're going to listen to. And we need to make sure folks are speaking with one voice, that vaccinations work, and that you're not getting vaccinated just to protect yourself. Of course you are, you're getting vaccinated because that affects others. That's the way you get to herd immunity. That's the way the people who can't get vaccinated because of various health compromises they might have, the way you help keep them safe is by you getting vaccinated. It is a truly collectivist act. It is a communitarian act. We need to think of it that way.
It definitely is. I have like one more question, then I'll stop bulldozing Alexander and let him talk for a minute.
We're all good.
So I think yesterday it was Biden released a statement, the CDC released a statement saying, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear masks in pretty much any setting. I think that statement has some good and bad to it. So on the one hand, it motivates people like, hey, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to do this, because unfortunately, a lot of people seem to think that wearing a mask is an infringement on their personal freedom. But just in your opinion, as someone who's worked in politics and community organizing, how do you think that communication plays out? Because isn't there a risk that people can just say, oh, I'm not going to wear a mask, no one knows if I'm vaccinated or not? Like, do you think from your perspective, someone who's been in this area for such a long time, it was the right thing to do?
You've described the tension exactly, and I don't know all the elements that go into how the CDC decides what it says when it says, but I think it has given both hope and confusion. We can have two feelings at the same time, and that's how I feel about it. I'm in a park right now. I've been wearing my mask. I just took it off for this interview, but I had it on when I came on. And I run into other parents, and we're all joking and saying, "Why are we wearing our masks still? We're vaccinated. We were told we're outside." Some of it is the non-clarity around kids, because kids can't get vaccinated, even though kids are infected far less seriously, are not super spreaders. We're all still concerned about, is there some factor that we should be cognizant of? And then, of course, that you also mentioned, which is not everyone is vaccinated, and you want to be respectful of that. So personally, I'm going to keep wearing my mask and take it down when people say, "Hey, I'm vaccinated and my mask is off." It becomes a conversation. I think over the summer, this may be likely to change. But for now, in the neighborhood I live in, which has had high levels of mask compliance, but also high levels of vaccination, ironically, I think people will keep their masks on a bit longer.
Yeah, that seems to weirdly be the correlation, is the higher vaccine rates you have, the higher mask compliance you have. Okay, I will let Alex talk, because I feel like I've bulldozed this for like a good 20 minutes.
Conversation has been very interesting, and we're talking about vaccination and things like that, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, I'll get a copy of my vaccination record card, and I'll use that to prove that I'm vaccinated, and then I can go into buildings without a mask and things like that." But now there are things, there are blank vaccination cards online that you can find, you can download, and you can basically make a fake vaccination card, and that's. I'm seeing it in a few circles online, and it's being spread around. People are like, "Oh, well, here's this PDF, just download it, make it look real, and you're good." And it's a very real possibility that if vaccination records are going to be used as a way to prove that you can go inside businesses without wearing masks, that you can just make a fake card go in and you're good. Nobody's going to know the difference, right? You just have a card, unless they have somebody there that can validate, but not every business isn't going to have that, especially small businesses. So that's a very real possibility, because a lot of people are still very anti-vax, and there are things being said. At least I'm in California. I'm in San Francisco. So very big hotbed. We just got the heaviest restrictions lifted, and people are beginning to just go into businesses without masks. And this is in San Francisco. People are going into businesses without masks. They're like, "I don't care." The owners don't care. The employees, I'm sure some of them care, but in a large part, people aren't reacting. I've seen people go into businesses where I've been, and they're not wearing a mask and nobody says anything. So I don't know how it is in New York, but.
Well, I think that last point goes back to something Marielle was saying, which is about the mixed signals from the CDC. It heightens the culture war. If you're a business and you say, "You know what, I want people to be masked in my business because it's what I feel like will be safe, or there's some other outstanding reasons, or I want to keep my employees safe," you are now asking for people who are already feeling tense about that, maybe already feeling like there's an infringement, to actually say, "Well, the CDC says I don't have to." It's such a turnaround of how, and now you're putting businesses in a place where they have to police their customers and create confrontations. So that's the hard part about it. And I'm seeing it a little of it. Again, I'm in an area that's pretty high mask compliance. I was at a bagel shop this morning. Somebody didn't have their mask on. The person behind the counter said, "Sir," just gestured, and he put it on. He put it on. But it's none of these stores were even asking for vaccination cards or vaccination proof. It was really just about masking. On the vaccination cards and vaccination evidence, the best answer is, let's get to herd immunity. Let's just get enough people vaccinated that it actually becomes less relevant. When I go to a Broadway show, my family has worked in theater. I have a background in arts and culture. I cannot wait to go to theater again. I don't need to get into the details of, has everyone who's come in shown their vaccination card or not. If that's what they want us to do, I will do it. I'll bring it. And sure enough, some people get a fake vax card than to just get vaccinated. But I guess you can print it out online, so maybe it's not that much work. But ultimately, if I think that 70% of the people in the city are vaccinated, I'm actually going to feel much better than did the ushers and the box office managers manage to get people. So like in the end, it's let's get everyone vaccinated more than fighting over vaccination cards. It's just where my instinct is in terms of what's going to make us safer overall. I also think that carrying a vaccination card ultimately is going to be a challenging thing to enforce. And so I'm not against requiring vaccinations. I'm actually very in favor of it, as I was saying, like schools. And again, when we're out of the emergency authorization mode, schools should be able to require it. Summer camps should be able to require it. I do worry when there's things like you have to have a card or else, there can often be a level of criminalization that comes with the enforcement of it that is often unevenly criminalizes Black and brown communities. And you can start to imagine worlds in which a Black youth in New York doesn't have their vaccination card and is punished for it in a way that a white youth would not be. It becomes one more form of criminalizing in a racially inequitable way. So it's not that I'm opposed to vaccination cards as a tool. I want to think about how it's enforced and who enforces it and how we make sure that it doesn't have this sort of inequitable enforcement we've seen across all other kinds of rules that lead to excessive policing and excessive criminalization.
Did you enjoy these clips? Want to hear the rest of the episode? Click the links below to listen to the full episode on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other popular streaming apps. Remember to support us. You can do this by checking out our Instagram pages at YIP Institute and at Watch Verbum. You can also look at our website at www.yipinstitute.com. Make sure to follow our page as we upload weekly. Have a good day.